You know what the argyro means in the eye in the Bible, in that teaching of the Lord Jesus, in which he says that before someone wants to take the argyro out of his brother's eye, first he needs to take the post that is in his own eye. In this video, you will understand what the argyro quoted in the Bible is, and what is the meaning of this expression in the teaching of Jesus. Well, for starters, you need to understand that the biblical meaning of argyro indicates basically a cisco or a small stain. So when the Bible talks about the air lingle in the eye, it refers to a small cisco that can disrupt the vision, and this situation is used as a figure of misconduct. The word argyro is used in some biblical translations of two texts of the New Testament, Matthew 7 and Luke 6. And in these texts, this word argyro translates a Greek term that conveys the idea of something dry. Therefore, the argyro could be a dry branch, that is, a small piece of straw, and that word can also be applied to refer to a residue or a small stain. And that is why many biblical translations exchange the word argyro for the word cisco, while few other translations also bring the word spot. But undoubtedly, what arouses people's curiosity about the meaning of argyro in the Bible is precisely the way this word appears in the teaching of the Lord Jesus Christ. In his well-known series of speeches in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus spoke about the inconsistency of people who are bothered by an argyro in the eye of the other, while they themselves have a beam in their eyes. In Matthew chapter 7, between verses 3 and 5, the biblical text says, "And why does it notice the argyro that is in your brother's eye, and don't you see the post that is in your eye? Or how shall you say to your brother, 'Let me take the argyro out of your eye,' being a beam in yours? Hypocrite. Take the post from your eye first, and then you will take care of taking the argyro out of your brother's eye." It's easy to realize that, in these words, the Lord Jesus sought to establish a contrast between an argyro, that is, a cisco, and a piece of beam. The word beams in this text, or locks in some translations, translates a Greek term that, in its root, communicates the sense of sustaining. Therefore, what Jesus does is contrast a small cisco with a beam, with a support post. And that means that when a person has a large piece of beam in his vision, they can never be able to get the little cisco that hinders someone else's vision. The idea is that it makes no sense to try to correct a failure on someone else when they have an even greater failure. Some people are very bothered by the deformity of others and do not see that they themselves have a much more serious deformity. In fact, those who try to take the argyro out of their brother's eye while ignoring the post that is in their own eye ends up living hypocrisy. Therefore, it is necessary to take the post first from his own eye before he wanted to notice the cisco that is in the eye of the other person. Even Jesus used this illustration in a context in which he spoke about the judgment. But that does not mean that Jesus forbade his followers to judge. On the contrary, it is often necessary to judge. Christ's followers are expected to practice the right judgment to which they submit themselves. This is clear in verse 5 of Matthew 7, which we already read, in which the Lord Jesus says, "Hypocritical, first takes the post from your eye, and then you will take care of taking the argyro out of your brother's eye." In other words, by warning his listeners about the mistake of wanting to take the argyro in his eye when there is something much bigger in his own eye, Jesus disapproved of the hypocritical judgment. And this is the type of judgment wrong. So, to get the argyro out of someone's eye, first you need to see enough. First you need to eliminate the beam that blocks your own vision. You can judge someone else. Yes, you may want to correct someone's error, and you are expected to do that. But first you need to check if you submit to this same judgment and approve of it, before you need to analyze if there is no even greater error in you. And if you like to understand the meaning of the argyro in the eye on the Bible.
You stayed until the end, and you know what that means? It means we're connected. So, comment your city, your country, check out the links in the description, and share this with someone who also understands the value of truly listening. Thank you, a big hug to all, and see you in the next video.